they won in what was easily the most efficient game of Jaylen Green's career. Jaylen Green's tied a career high with 42 points. He shot 13 of 18 from the field and 5 of 6 from outside, 11 of 11 from the free throw line, and just 3 turnovers in what was an incredibly impressive performance given that it was going against the Grizzlies' Ja Morant. The Rockets end up winning 121-18. They have now beaten the Grizzlies 3 times this year, so they've won the season series. There will be one more game between these two, and they have a commanding 2-game lead in the Southwestern Division of the NBA. That's what teams in Houston do. We own the division. First it was the Astros. All those American League West crowns in a row. 8 straight. Right? Right. Then the Houston Texans, 2 straight AFC South titles. 8 AFC South titles since 2011. And now you got the Houston Rockets. 2 games up in the Southwest Division. 6 games back in the Western Conference. Hell to the yeah. Paul, the division doesn't matter. Shut up. The division matters to me, damn it. Okay? Although, winning the division doesn't really get you much in the NBA these days. But to see Green do that in a matchup like that has me excited. And I'm wondering if this is just a hot streak for Green, of which we've seen many, or if he's finally starting to figure it out. Because if you take a look at his last 4 games, he has been really good shooting the basketball, specifically from outside. Not as efficient on the 5th and the 7th against the Lakers and the Wizards, respectively. 12 shots, 41% against the Lakers in a 33-point performance. 15 shots, 7 made, a 46.7% three-point percentage against the rank-ass Washington Wizards. But these past 2 games against Memphis, with the game against the Hawks canceled in between, the 9th, 27 points, 4 of 8 from outside, 11 of 21 from the field. And then last night, 5 of 6 from outside, 13 of 18 from the field. Like, you know that that's not going to regularly happen with Jaylen Green. From a three-point shooter perspective, he's closer to James Harden, hopefully someday, than he is to Ray Allen, you know? And I wish he was more like Ray Allen. I like the efficient, dead-eye three-point shooters, but there are very few of those, you know? It's Steph Curry. That's kind of it these days as far as killer from outside that puts up a ton of them and has an offense centered around him. But Green with Amen Thompson, it's working. And it's interesting that it's working because you would think, all right, well, with Jabari Smith Jr. out there, at least he stretches the court. With Amen Thompson, who can't really shoot from outside, kind of makes the court more compact and gives Green less room to drive. But they've got quite the rapport. And this starting lineup that has come to be because of Jabari Smith getting Wally pipped, essentially, is a fantastic development. So my question really is Jaylen Green in the midst of another hot streak, or is this who Jaylen Green can be, age 22, turning 23 in a couple of weeks? And I really don't know the answer to that, but I know that last year I was in a spot where I thought Green's never going to be able to shake some of the bad habits he has. This year, in year 2 with Ime Udoka, I think there's a chance that he becomes the kind of player that Ime Udoka sees. Here is Ime Udoka after last night's game on Space City Home Network talking about Jaylen Green and the difference for him this year.
I think you're seeing from him, Jaylen, now that you might not have seen over like a hot month last season. Is anything particularly in terms of his on-court development? Just
I love his defensive effort. It goes under. It's probably underrated for him is that he's taking the challenge with Bane and Morant and those guys. They're trying to put him in actions, and he's holding up really well there, taking pride in that. So, obviously, the scoring stands out. I think I saw he matched his career high or whatever, but taking care of the ball as well. He had the late turnover, but other than that, he coughed those up a few times last year. So, getting more used to teams going after him. Obviously, when you're scoring at that clip, they're going to come after you at some point. But he loved to be a facilitator out there and get the numbers behind it. So all he has to do is deliver the ball.
I love that the first thing that Ime brought up when asked about Jaylen Green was the defense, because he's given more of a shit this year. That's huge. Steven Silas enabled so many bad habits with his step-parent or substitute teacher coaching style. I think he was just too nice. And you got a bunch of young players, and GM Rafael Stone perhaps being a little bit too hands-on, specifically with Kevin Porter Jr. wanting to make him the next James Harden. And you can see how some of the bad off-the-court habits and on-the-court habits would lead to the Rockets being a complete fucking mess. But with Ime Udoka, Green is actually improving. And it does make you wonder, had the Rockets had a better coach for the first 2 seasons of Jaylen Green, would we perhaps be talking about a player who's more developed and more polished at this point in time? They really lucked into Ime Udoka as a head coach. Here is more Ime Udoka talking about Jaylen Green, specifically how he carried the Rockets in last night's 121-18 win over the Grizzlies.
He carried us, I mean, quite frankly, throughout the whole first half offensively. We weren't really guarding up to our level. I think they're 57.5 or 60 to 57. So we were scoring enough, but weren't defending, and a big part was him kind of keeping us afloat. I think he had 20 plus in the first half and then kind of duplicated that in the second half. But while they were going after him, he still beat the double teams. He didn't force it in other than the one late turnover. Handled that pretty well. But, just like Alpia's at times, drawing double teams, Jalen does the same thing. It opens everything up for everybody else. And from there, it's just make the right read or take the shot. And I think it was all based on his aggressiveness and his scoring punch when we were really struggling.
Don't you love how Udoka is talking about other guys while he's talking about Green? He's trying to keep it team-oriented. He carried us, but he also was making things open for other guys. And Desert Stroh brings up on YouTube at Paul Gallant, tied his career high in points or whatever with the first comment that he had. Yeah, I love that. I like that the coach has this kind of mentality. Fuck the individual stuff. Fuck the Deontay Johnson stuff. You want a guy who is going to keep a player who scored 42 points and tied a career high grounded. And that's the Ime Udoka effect. One last note on Jaylen Green. This is Jaylen Green with my old co-host and good friend Vanessa Richardson after the game. This bothered me a little bit. Call me an old man yelling at a cloud. Whatever. But if you watch this, if you're an old head like me, you will be bothered by this too. Here is Jaylen Green with Vanessa Richardson and a surprise appearance by Dylan Brooks.
There was one point in the fourth quarter, John Morant hit a big three, and then you hit a big shot. You guys smiled at each other, and you bumped chests. Why are you able to thrive?
That's good job. Great job. Great job.
I've never seen Dylan Brooks smile. That was Dylan Brooks coming in at the very end. But I'm going to repeat the part that bothered me a little bit. A great and astute observation by my old co-host, Vanessa.
Hit a big shot. You guys smiled at each other, and you bumped chests.
Oh! Jaylen Green and John Morant. I do not want these two bumping chests as they're playing one another and both having great games. Fuck that. Fuck that. Ew. God. The kids these days. I get it. It's not a playoff game. If that happened in a playoff game, I wouldn't like it. And I don't know, maybe Jaylen Green doesn't want to talk trash to John Morant, given what he did to that high schooler, given his propensity to go on Instagram Live playing with guns. But, oh, come on. You're going after each other. I'd rather, like Anthony Edwards, Jaylen Green throw obscene gestures John Morant's way than bump chest with him. Even if the two like each other. They can hug it out after the game. Jaylen Green, a little bit later, the interview with Vanessa continues, and, he says exactly what you want to hear, but if he's bumping chest with John Morant, it's hard to believe it.
Why are you able to thrive against the best in the league?
It's a competitive game. I like to compete.
Competitive game, I like to compete. Okay. it's not as much competition if you and the guy you're going up against are buddy-buddy. But hey, that's just me. Call me an old head. Tormick Johnson asks, do you want Ja and Jalen bumping pelvises instead? Nope, don't want that. I also don't want a Josh Christopher situation, okay? All I'm saying is perhaps no bumping of any kind for two guys who are going up against each other. One last thing on the Rockets before you can ask me anything. Ask Gallant anything. On YouTube at Paul Gallant. On Twitch at Gallant Says. Facebook.com/Paul Gallant Sports. On Twitter at Gallant Says. And on Instagram at Sports Gallant. A very interesting question was asked during last night's press conference. And I can understand why after seeing this post from Adam Wexler over at Sports Talk 790. Rockets versus the top 8 teams in the West. 1-2 against OKC, 3-0 against Memphis, 0-0 against Denver. They play Denver Thursday. 2-0 against Dallas, 1-0 against the Lakers, 3-0 against the Clippers, 1-1 against Minnesota. That's 11-3, 26-12 overall. They're doing very well against the top 8 in the West, though a lot of their wins are coming against the Clippers, Mavericks, and Grizzlies. We'll see how they fare the next time that they play Minnesota and when they actually play Denver for a first time, and if they can actually even things up with the 1 seed in the West, OKC, next time they play. But their record, which is the second best mark in the Western Conference, and the fact that they are winning against good teams allows this question, courtesy of Adam Spillane, Sports Radio 610 and the Associated Press, to be asked. And I love that we can finally ask this question. In case you missed it, here's Adam Spillane with Ime Udoka.
We'll be at the halfway point when this trip is over. You're second in the West right now. Like, what's the ceiling of this team? Like, can this team win a championship this year?
I mean, we can improve vastly still, and that's the good part about it. When you look at, our 12 losses, you could cut that right in half, based on some last, fourth quarters things that happened early in the year, some of the bad losses to Charlotte and Portland and some of the teams, San Antonio, and the teams that we felt we should have taken care of business against. And so now we've done really well against the lower record teams and played well against the good teams for the most part. And so I think it's all building blocks, and the confidence continues to grow. But the thing about us as a staff and our team is that we know we can get so much better. And that's why we're excited about where we're at and where we can get to.
You can practically hear Ime's shoes squeaking with the defense that he's playing right there, dancing around that question because he doesn't want to answer it head on. It was a great question by Adam. I love that he asked it. I even texted him when he asked it. Hell yeah, dude. Because you can actually ask this question now. The answer is they're probably not a championship team this year. I would imagine their ceiling is the second round. But with how they're playing, specifically with Amen Thompson now in the starting lineup, blocking shots left and right, with Jaylen Green seemingly improving, with a bunch of other young players on a team that turns the ball over left and right, yet still has the second best record in the West. Imagine if they ever get somebody who can handle the ball. Nothing against Fred VanVleet. You can start asking that question. And I did not think we would be asking this question this year about what their ceiling is this year. And there probably is a ceiling, but it excites me to think that they are ahead of schedule. And that's a question you can ask when you know that the team you're covering is that.